What's your problem? What's your challenge? Who are you solving for? How are they currently experiencing the problem? What's their dream scenario? What's your dream scenario? How does that come together? Mix that with a mood board, do a little competitive analysis, and then I bring that into AI so that I was able to be human, and now you help me to parse that out into like one major one-shot prompt.
Welcome to How I AI, the podcast featuring real people, real stories, and real AI in action. I'm Brooke Raymer, your host and guide on this journey into the real-world impact of artificial intelligence. For over 15 years, I've worked in creative marketing, events, and business strategy, wearing all the hats. I know the struggle of trying to scale and manage all things without burning out. But here's the game changer, AI. This isn't just a podcast. How I AI is a community, a space where curious minds like you come together, share ideas, because AI isn't just a trend, it's a shift. And the sooner we embrace it, the more freedom, creativity, and opportunities we'll unlock. Today, we're talking about vibe coding, the future of work, and why I believe we are entering a major shift in how people make money, build leverage, and bring their ideas to life. Here's what I keep seeing. We're moving out of a world where people only think of income through a lens of job title, a salary, or waiting for someone else to hand them permission. And we're moving into a world where people can create their own products, own their own websites, build their own apps, tools, and even their own niche communities with far less capital than ever before. And this is where vibe coding comes in. If you are brand new to that term, vibe coding is basically an AI-assisted creative workflow where you can describe what you want in natural language. The AI helps you generate the code, and you keep iterating the prompt by testing and refining and eventually shipping some sort of product. I've been vibe coding a bit myself, and it is pure gold for marketers. For example, you can create a custom sales landing page for anything that you're wanting to sell online digitally. You can get creative with your marketing funnels by creating interactive quizzes. Really, the world is your oyster when it comes to thinking of creative ways to funnel people to your business. And the bigger reason I wanted to do this episode right now is that it sits at this larger conversation about the future of work. We're in Q2 of 2026, and I truly believe a year from now, things are going to look very different. We've been watching AI move from experimentation into everyday business operations. This past year, we've seen layoffs make major headlines, more tasks are being automated, and as a result, more people are diversifying their income. They're building side projects, micro businesses, digital products, and low to no code tools. The barrier between having an idea and actually building the first version of it is getting dramatically smaller. Even the data points to this shift. The Federal Reserve reported in 2024, 13% of adults earned money beyond traditional employment. The job market itself is continuing to be reshaped. The World Economic Forum Future of Jobs research found that employers expect 69 million jobs to grow and 83 million jobs to decline by 2027. They also found that 44% of workers' skills are expected to be disrupted over that same period, and that 42% of business tasks are expected to be automated by 2027. And the appetite for starting things is elevated too. The U.S. Census Bureau reported that more than 496,000 business applications came through in February 2026 alone. So people are not only looking for work, they're actively trying to create new business vehicles for income. And with vibe coding, more people are going to realize they can build something useful for themselves, their audience, their neighborhood, their clients, or their industry without needing a full team or a big budget to begin. I've been seeing examples of this with really specific community-driven tools. One example is a woman I had on my podcast named Maya, and she founded Map My Milk. She is a mother of two who vibe coded an app on Bolt, and she has over 500 mothers using her app, which supports breastfeeding and baby food allergen tracking. Another example I recently researched was called Squad Up. It's a hyper-local pickup sports app built around community and local sports. These are not giant venture-backed ideas. These are targeted tools built around real people, real needs, and real communities. And the key differentiator here is community. People don't just build, they need a path to reach an audience and monetize. And it's been estimated that the creator economy's total addressable market could roughly double to $480 billion by 2027, up from about $250 billion at the time of Goldman Sachs' original estimate. The point here being that founders and creators are targeting small, specific pain points and monetizing. They're launching micro products, they're building hyper niche tools that would never justify hiring a developer, and vibe coding feels like having a personal software team on demand. So this episode isn't just about job replacements and job security and the future of work. It's also a story about reinvention, adaptation, and those who are willing to learn how to work differently are really going to come out on top. That is the shift I want people paying attention to. And honestly, this is why I care so much about creating physical spaces where people can try this in real time, ask questions, and see what's possible. I've been putting on local vibe coding workshops here in the Miami community and have a really exciting event coming up during New York Tech Week this June 3rd. I'm co-hosting an event called She Ships. It's going to be a free guided building session for women with ideas. This isn't a hackathon, it's not competitive, it's a collaborative room for women who want to explore vibe coding for the first time. My co-host is Marianne Bacall, and she's a lovable ambassador. Attendees will receive lovable credits, and there's no pressure to be technical, just a room where you can explore, build, and surprise yourself with what you're capable of. Because the creator economy is evolving from attention-based monetization into infrastructure-based monetization. In other words, people are no longer only earning from what they post or share or speak on. They're starting to earn money from what they can build and create. Okay, now let's get into today's guest on How I AI. She's the perfect person to help me unpack all of this. Jessica Campbell is actually returning back to the show. She's been one of those people in my Miami community who has really helped me understand vibe coding. She comes from a product design background, has been working in tech since 2013, and through her platform Creative Currents, she's created workshops and experiences that help creatives and curious builders experiment with AI in ways that feel accessible, thoughtful, and current. In today's conversation, we get into what vibe coding really is, how Jessica first stumbled into it, the platforms she likes best right now, the design thinking and pre-work that should happen before you ever start prompting, how to think about debugging, things like version control, onboarding flows, and deployment, and what she learned from vibe coding 30 apps in 30 days this past January. My goal for this episode is to give you a more cohesive view of vibe coding. A lot of things are rarely discussed, from security to compliance risk. And I think it's important to note that shipping AI-generated code without deep review can increase vulnerabilities, create compliance blind spots, and it's important to note that vibe coding can only take you so far. I think it's a great start to get the first version of your product out there, whether for pitching and fundraising or to get initial feedback from your ideal customer. So whether you're AI curious or sitting on an idea you don't know how to build, or you're just trying to understand where the future of work is headed next, this episode is for you. All right, let's get into it. Jessica, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Welcome back to How I AI.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be back.
Yes, I have been wanting to do a vibe coding episode for a while, and you and I have done some cool collaborative workshops about vibe coding here in Miami. You have another one coming up, and so do I. Yours is in Miami, mine's in New York, and so it's time for us to come on together and chat about vibe coding. Before we dive in, I would love for you to just open the floor and share with listeners a little bit about yourself for those who haven't caught your previous episodes on the show.
Sure. So my name is Jessica Campbell. Call me Jess if we haven't met. I'm based here in Miami. I'm a Florida girl, but I've lived in Georgia. I lived in New York for a bit and came back to Miami because this is my happy place as of current. And I've worked in tech since 2013. I started at iHeartRadio, kind of stumbled into it, thankfully. And I've always focused in the world of product design. So building apps and websites and sketching out the digital strategy for a company. And over the last 3.5 years or so, I've really gotten into AI, generative AI, around the same time as a lot of people have because of ChatGPT. And mainly I focus on AI for creatives because that's the world I'm in and like the creative agency world, and mainly try to play my experiments within that. And within those last 3 years, I started a workshop series here in Miami called Creative Currents, which kind of gave me an area to play out loud with creatives to come and kind of talk about lots of different topics with AI. So I've done AI for music, AI for film, AI, of course, for art. So I've been doing that. And then more recently, I've been focused on vibe coding because it's kind of, one of the most exciting ways for not only creatives, but for anyone to experiment with AI. And yeah, we'll talk more about that in a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jessica was the first one that got me to get into vibe coding because she really was that support and helped me go back and forth. And she also has a really cool vibe code studio that helped me set it up. But before we get into that, when did you first start dabbling into vibe coding? If you can share about that initial experience and your thoughts and how you approached it personally in the beginning.
I guess it was more of a mistake. I didn't even realize I could do that. And with Claude last year, I was prepping for a workshop in Mexico, and I was trying to experiment with an idea of like a dashboard I wanted to create using all of the team's insights. And then all of a sudden, instead of it just making me like a Google sheet or like a breakdown, it made me like a website, like a interactive look at it. And I like paced around my apartment. I was like, what just happened? And I had heard about vibe coding because it got popular last February of 2025. But I think like a lot of people, the word coding kind of threw me off. Um, Even if it did seem so simple in its description, like coding with your vibes, like I just didn't feel like I needed to get that into it. But then when I saw how simple it was and how it helped me tell stories better, and then I thought, okay, what about all of those apps that I've been sitting on and all of those blockers I had because maybe I didn't have the resources at the time to hire a team, or it was hard for me to like demonstrate certain ideas without having those true coding skills. Then it was like, all right, well, this is very exciting. Now I have even another level of experimentation to kind of bring. I think that was like my biggest area of weakness within this world of like being able to make it past that hump of coding and demonstrating past a design idea. Like, how can I demonstrate a prototype? So that's kind of how it started. And it's been a fun rabbit hole ever since.
Yeah, so here we are a year and a couple months later. Which platforms do you like to vibe code on? If you can kind of share about the evolution of how you started, what you're gravitating towards now, and why.
Well, I'll say my three favorite. Well, Google AI Studio because it's the most accessible as of now. I think there was just an update on like their token limits and whatnot, which scares me. I have to go update some things. Note to self. Replit because it's the best at taking, let's say, if you have a design in Figma, and like it's a little bit more complicated. It's definitely got a lot more token limits, but it's if you know how to direct it well and also have the patience to sit through and recognize like how to push and pull Replit. And then Lovable. I didn't actually care for Lovable because I thought it felt the outputs felt basic for a while. And then recently I went to a Lovable workshop just to see how other people were using it, and I love it. I do love Lovable. It's great. It's very great for marketing pages, or for like personal portfolios, but it's extremely well when you pair it with like a Claude in your browser and then have like something like Lovable or any of these tools in the screen, and then you could just kind of have it code and build on its own, which has been interesting.
Yes, I like Lovable a lot for like web pages, like marketing funnels. It's really easy to get like a sales page going on there very quickly. Do you have different use cases that you go to Google AI Studio for versus say Replit?
I like to take my starter prompt, my large one-shot prompt, and test across multiple areas just to see what happens,
Hmm.
because these things change so quickly that you can't just judge a tool on where it was a month ago. Um, Especially with Claude, like I wouldn't have vibe coded certain things within it before, and now I'm seeing its design levels are getting higher, especially the more you direct it, it's more responsive. But I would use Google AI Studio and Replit more for product experiments. So, for example, at work, if we're thinking through a workflow idea, like, I don't know, something for like refining how we do the contract process, or even for new biz needs, I think that Google AI Studio and Replit are better for that. And I typically see them kind of they're very close, but one is typically better at another, and I'll try to see like whatever helps me get to it faster, and then I'll just piece between those. Lovable definitely for marketing things. I used it recently to make a landing page that was really great. And also to refine my portfolio. And I think like for people who have had to redo their portfolio so many times, I would like run to Lovable. Like I got it done in a day. It did amazing things. I was able just to like share, links to video, case study videos, and here's my idea, and I would like to have it formatted like this, and here's my Pinterest inspiration, and it just had this like multi-layer portfolio done in a day. So incredible. Um, and then, but also for apps, because we were mainly talking about web there. Um, for apps, mobile apps, I would stick between Google. I would, since the token limit is lower on Google AI Studio, I would say experiment there first and then bring it to Replit.
Okay, yes, I did get that email from Google AI Studio about the new token usage as well. I
Yeah,
haven't
need
I
to write
haven't
down that to do.
I haven't looked into it yet. But yeah, this is why time is of the essence, right? To start playing around with these experiments and tools. That's important to note. Okay, so you mentioned something just now I want to dig into. You said my starter prompt. For those listening who don't understand all the pre work that goes into vibe coding, if you could share a bit about your pre work process before you are actually in the editing mode back and forth.
Yeah. So in general, my background as a creative, like I always was like writing and painting, and everyone talks about the human in the loop process and start human first, and I will tell you, it's very important to do that because as a person who's been so hands-on with AI for these last few years, I've noticed where I've like stopped journaling as much and I stopped painting as much, and I had to like lasso myself back a bit. So a lot. So I would say, I always try to start with writing first, doing like just how I originally did things first before generative AI. So doing the research, getting inspired on my own. I'm still a Pinterest girly. And I really hope they like start doing cool stuff with AI, because I feel like they're dragging. But maybe they don't have to, that part. But I try to stay as it's not really analog, but like somewhere between analog and where I was before AI, and which helps me to get a better thing. And then I typically try to follow a design thinking process, which is what I learned from the product agency world, which is how I built my Vibe Studio tool. for the most part. And kind of, it's like a little bit of go to market strategy too. But, what's your problem? What's your challenge? Who are you solving for? How are they currently experiencing the problem? What's their dream scenario? What's your dream scenario? How does that come together? Mix that with a mood board, do a little competitive analysis, and then I bring that into AI so that I was able to be human. And now you help me to parse that out into like one major one shot prompt. The first one, because they say that you should always try to do like three shots. And like, these are some of these terms that I get funny with, but the first shot, like as close as I can to a great view of my idea, is I want to nail that first shot. So it's very typically very long. And then yeah, I'll paste that around a few different places to see who got it best, and then I'll work from there.
Okay, before we dig into what a first shot prompt is in your Vibe Code Studio, can you share a little bit deeper about what design thinking is for someone who is just starting to see this term pop up on the internet?
Well, design thinking is it's a approach to how you think about solving a problem, like in a design first mentality. So usually it's that process of, what is the problem? What is the challenge? Who is it solving for? Who is it solving for is typically at the center. So I think these phrases of human centered design thinking are kind of interchangeable. I'm sure someone might check me on that, but essentially, whenever I've been across these processes, that's typically the flow you follow. So that's like the design thinking process. You kind of have like a checklist. Some people you can go different ways of making it better or even making it more lean. But that checklist that I just ran through is pretty much the design thinking process of what is your problem? What's the challenge? What's the opportunity? Who are you solving for? What's their current experience? And you can, even pull that out a little bit more of like, who are the different types of people experiencing this issue? How are they experiencing it differently? What apps or tools or their own interesting solutions might they be using to solve for what you're trying to come up with? And the more niche you get, the better of a product you're going to have, and the more you can kind of apprehend the issues of your user.
If you're tuning into this podcast, you're most likely an AI advocate, and you may have also wondered how to support your body against the invisible stress of EMFs. Think Wi-Fi, cell towers, or hours in front of your laptop. Lila Quantum products are lab-tested in triple-blind studies and are proven to help harmonize and neutralize EMF signals. Their products are the few things I felt a real energetic shift from. I personally wear their Quantum Energy necklace daily. And if you're someone who cares about optimizing your energy and nervous system like I do, explore their offers with my exclusive discount links below. Thank you for digging into that more. Start human first, really getting clear on your ideal customer profile and how they would approach it. Even for me, for my first vibe coding experience on Google AI Studio, I created a really cool Venn diagram quiz process. But even then, it's hard for me to think about what would someone think looking at this for the first time. And I've discovered that I think I need to do a little bit more of like warming up and explaining what the experience is about, because it's not really something someone understands jumping into it. So yeah, just really, really thinking, what will people think when they look at this for the first time? Because you can get very close to something when you're building and forget that step. So you teased a little bit about your Vibe Code Studio. Can you share about it and the reason why you
Yeah.
created it?
Yeah. And one thing I would add to that is a pro tip for when you're making these apps is always throw on an onboarding flow, because that is a great question. Like, try to make everything as self-explanatory as possible. Like when I'm making decks, I always try to think of it in that. Like I make my slides very conversational so that if I'm not in the room, it could speak without me. So same for your app. If you're not in the room guiding someone like Clippy, having that onboarding flow that tells them like, welcome to da 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 da. This is how you would use it at a high level. And it's for this is, anyways. Um, Vibe Code Studio is essentially built on the design thinking process, and I built it as another experiment. I'm always experimenting. And we were putting together this workshop, Vibe Code Your Vision. And I usually have, like I was just saying, like a presentation up where I'm guiding people through things and we're going step by step and we'll pause and everyone's a little bit more interactive. But I thought, what if, and this is always a good thing to start with your what if, like, what if you made a tool that also helped facilitated it and that they can type things into versus just sending them to ChatGPT or Claude that's already contained, already has like the workshop contained within it. Um, and then they can, kind of meet them where they're at because I think that's where these tools should kind of go. And a lot of people who are in this space as AI leads should think about that. The more I meet people and talk to them about like where they are with AI, it's just too much to try to get everybody to be like, here's all the best prompts and tools and things you should know. I think it's just like, what is the process you're using? Just like design thinking, like what works for you? Just wrap AI with it and just let that update in the background. So Vibe Studio is kind of like that. I have them answer those questions like, hey, at the bare minimum, what's your idea? At the bare minimum, what's the challenge you're trying to solve for? Have some little buttons to help them enhance and elaborate with them and brainstorm. But really, that's what it is. It goes through that process. I have some other questions in there. And then it was also built to solve for a lot of people when they vibe code and they don't really know a process and maybe they don't have a product design background or a design background or a digital background. It's going to look like a sea of same. Like you see a lot of vibe coded tools and they're all purple. They all kind of have the same
Yes.
like there's like an M dash of vibe coded design now, like certain little like elements that look you're like, okay, that was vibe coded. You want it to it's fine if it is, and maybe you're just trying to build a prototype to get an idea across. But if you're trying to make something that's like truly consumer facing, you need to like push the bar a bit more. So I wanted this to help be kind of like a facilitator for that process so they could get a better, more niche, not even just an idea, but like a vibe coded output. So it's used as a companion tool at this moment for like Lovable and whatever tool, Google AI Studio and Replit. Um, and then at the end, you also have the ability to like think through your go-to-market strategy, and it helps you like with the messaging for social media. I think a lot of people don't get to that step on there, so I'm actually gonna have like a follow-up workshop for these now. But I will say, just dreaming out loud right now, I would love to actually make it so you can just vibe code on it and just it be like a one platform thing.
Tell me more about your follow up workshops because something we didn't touch on, which I think is skimmed over beyond the premeditative work that needs to be done before vibe coding. Can you share very briefly, about deployment when it comes to that portion where you're actually deploying your app, you're hosting it, you're putting in your credit card, you're paying for tokens? I think that's something that a lot of people glaze over when they talk about
Mm.
vibe code this, vibe code that.
Yeah, well, it depends on what tool you're using and also what type of app you're using, if it's mobile or web. Um, some tools make it easier for you to launch. Google AI Studio has Google Cloud integrated into it and GitHub already within it, and you could do all the version control and you can just push to a cloud link and then revert that to a domain you buy, just like you would if you were using Squarespace. So, in case you're not super techy, I might have said a lot of things right there that was like, oh, what? But don't worry, it's just like using Wix or Squarespace where you make something on there, you publish it like Canva, you publish it, it gives you like a link that's wrapped in their name, and then you can rewrap it with another domain you buy. Um, and all of them are just getting a little bit easier day by day. So I would say the GitHub thing is important because of version control. So in case things hit the fan while you're vibe coding as they do and you don't know how to get back, GitHub is what makes sure you protect each version of that. It's obviously great for plenty of other things, but like as a non technical person playing with vibe coding, it's very important for you to recognize version control, and especially if you're making something you care about. And on Replit, it's pretty similar as well. I think it already has version control baked in. But yeah, they all give you like these links when you hit publish, you have something that you can share, but you want to go ahead and do the whole redirect with another domain you purchase when you're ready to make it a little bit more professional.
Yeah, I think Google AI Studio also has version control, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to explain that a little bit more, it's like when you're editing a Word document and you want to undo and go
Mhm.
back.
Exactly, exactly. And sometimes the go back is not very, it could go wrong. So that's why you want to
Mm.
protect.
And even if you don't want to spend money on a domain yet, you can just use a bit.ly or something else if you're wanting to, because
Yeah.
those URLs can get very long.
Yes, they can. They can. Like the Google AI Studio ones are long. Replit does allow you before you hit as long as you like you save the project by the name that you want it to be named, it'll make the URL to that one and it'll just have like .replit at the end. Replit is great. It's just, blow through those credits if you're making something very intense, which most of us are when we're making these things. Replit
Definitely.
Replit is very reliable. Yeah.
So, as you mentioned, you've been experimenting a lot. One thing I got to witness you experimenting was what you did in January of this year, 2026. You did 30 vibe coded apps in 30 days, which is
Yeah.
incredible. Tell me everything about what you experienced behind the scenes of this process. I know you had many, many late nights on top of your already full time job putting this out for people. And take me through everything. Like, what did you learn along the way? What were your favorite parts? Like, what are the biggest things that you learned?
Sometimes you ever get these like crazy ideas, and unfortunately, it's so like stuck in your mind, you have to do it, and you're like, oof, this is gonna be a journey. And that was what happened. And it was very good. It was after we did our collaborative workshop, and I just felt like I wanted to see how far I could go with like these ideas. I wanted to see how far that tool could take us. I wanted to see like all the different venues I could bring it through. And I just wanted to start the year off on like a backlog of ideas that I could sift through. Essentially, I used my tool, the Vibe Studio, for every single idea. I started with that. I had a lot of when I started, I went to Claude and I was like, all right, help me come up with like 30 apps for 30 days so I can at least have like a backlog of prepared ideas. But to be honest, every week I like started afresh. And I really just came up with ideas from being out in the world and talking to friends and having some interesting experience and bumping into this and being like, I'll have an app for that. I'll make an app for that. I think some of my favorites were I made one called Cracked, and it was like to help you like to crack the understanding of anything. So if there was like an interesting article in the news that would just seemed a little bit too hard to understand, you could just put it into this little flow and it broke it down for you and kind of like a school way, like Duolingo for understanding any tough topic. And even gave you like a fun acronym on how to break it down. And if you wanted to teach it yourself, it gave you an interesting flow. So that was cool. I made one on um, called The Room. Some of these ideas were, I mean, the names were like, I was like just trying to make it through the day, but I called it The Room. And it was like, and this is from hearing other friends in these like solopreneurs in these scenarios where they just couldn't see eye to eye and they didn't really have like an advisor in the room to tell them like, hey, this is how you should move this call. And this is, I think like most entrepreneurs or most like startups fail because they can't see eye to eye, right? So I thought like, what about if I made something like a Zoom or like an Otter type experience, something that records your calls like Fireflies or whatever. And instead of just like afterwards, it gives you like the simple analysis. It gives you an analysis as if like Mark Cuban was in the room or Emma Grade. And it gives you tips on how you guys could have handled the call different, but also like business guidance for the next steps based off of whatever your goal is. So it's like always having an advisor in the room. These are
Cool.
things that, I want to see through. But yeah, there's a lot of cool ideas. But honestly, of all of them, Vibe Studio is the one that I'm looking to see through at the moment.
And take me through the troubleshooting process. Like, were there any specific type of apps that you felt like were more difficult than others and why?
Yes. The troubleshooting process, I use Claude to be my like key troubleshooter, helping me with debugging prompts and build prompts and whatnot. But as far as there was like a funny moment where I just wouldn't let it go, and I was like, this has to be perfect before I launch it at whatever unhealthy hour. And Claude was like, you need to go to bed. You've been on this for too many hours. It's fine. It's good. Just launch it. And that was interesting. But there is this tool, I think it was on Tastemaker, and it's basically like a constellation or a galaxy of defined by your taste. And then you can use it to create prompts. But this thing called Tastemaker is really cool because you can create like planets that collect everything that you liked and loved. So forever, like for example, like whatever your music tastes are and like what inspires you there, or like art, or what drives you in technology. And then you essentially have all of this data, these nodes of everything that is you based off of your likes, your preferences, what inspires you. And then that creates like your galaxy of taste. And then you can use that to make prompts so that you actually have a unique perspective. And that was driven from the problem of how do I create something that's just not AI slop? How can I bring in my own taste into how I approach everything? But many people don't even know how to define what their taste is. So it was meant to kind of help
Mhm.
you do that in a very complicated but beautiful way.
So, whenever you had a process where you were troubleshooting or debugging or having a hard time figuring it out, you felt like Claude was the best resource, or were there any other resources that helped you um, as someone who's not a non-dev or engineer background?
Yeah, no, I would say Claude. It like that month was a fast track to me recognizing that ChatGPT is kind of behind when it comes to these things, because I would test across both. And I'd been doing that for a while, but it wasn't as, I don't know, the tension wasn't as high on other things that I was testing with, so I didn't really care and I would still use ChatGPT. But after that month, I really recognized like Claude is the lead. And because I would get solutions recommended to me on even Gemini or ChatGPT for issues that I was hitting, or within the tool that I was vibe coding on itself, and it wasn't really giving me the best solution. So Claude, I'm glad everybody caught wind on that, is really great. But especially for debugging and troubleshooting. And it's sometimes as simple as taking as a screenshot, but sometimes you need to get further and like show the code, um, and give as much context as possible. But Claude really was the my troubleshooting developer buddy and my
Yes,
therapy buddy telling me to go to bed.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I have been hearing a lot about Claude in the past, handful of months, naturally. And I wanted to hear what other trends you see coming through with coding, vibe coding in particular. Like, where do you think we'll be a year from now?
I don't want to put the question on you, but like a year from now, I feel like who knows? But as far
Yeah.
as I can see right now, conversational interfaces seem to be the thing. Handless or not touchless coding, which is basically you're still doing the same things, but I think it's going to be less hands on keyboard. I'm using a tool called Whisper. Have you heard of that one?
I've heard of it, but can you share more about your experience?
Yeah, so it's from OpenAI apparently, and it's spelled WISPR in case you find another Whisper AI and it's not the right one, which I did by accident one day. And um, yeah, I mean it's just another, it's an easier, more smoother tool for using your voice to control anything on your computer. So it's great when you're vibe coding because typing all of this stuff, like just doing this stuff for endless hours is already enough. Typing it out, sometimes you probably feel slowed down trying to articulate these wild most because most of this is like stream of consciousness ideas. So that's why the voice dictation is not only just great as a build, but now it's as a, in the builder mode, but it's starting to work its way more into the UI. So I think a lot of people are noticing that you're going to see tools or websites or apps that are just led by your voice versus you typing things in. I think that's slowly but surely. I know that there's some like I was seeing like these incubators and startups, a lot of them were saying that most of the successful tools that were coming out of the groups were conversationally led. I think, but yeah, a year from now, it makes sense that I think that you'll see a lot more of that. So something to work into how you create. But I do want to note that once again, like human in the loop, protect your critical thinking, protect our brains, protect our ability to be crafty, think for ourselves. Typing is an important skill, I think. I think it's good for your brain to be able to type without looking. I don't know, it's just and maybe that's outdated. Did we have to as humans have to learn how to use a keyboard? Probably not. But I don't want to lose that skill, so I kind of go back and forth with it.
I find myself having way, way, way less patience nowadays to type anything.
Yeah, see? We're getting more reliant here and there. So
hmm
try to keep an eye on it.
I would love to have the ability just to voice vibe coding versus actually typing. So that's an exciting trend to see through. So, as we wrap up this vibe coding conversation, I hope it inspired a lot of people to get started, just hearing two gals talking about their experience. If you could share a little bit about your upcoming workshop this April, for those that are local to Miami, what can people experience or expect to go through during your process that you're hosting here in April?
Hopefully you meet a friend. I always try to make it very vibey, but try to make it like really like community led and feel like that you're having fun and that it's not your average tech talk. So that you're going to meet a room full of energetic quote unquote creatives to people just curious to yeah, an interesting group of people always. And I always start off with a little educational moment where I'm like, tell you what is even vibe coding and what is the competitive landscape like and how I'm using it. And then we do a little group collaboration on it. And then I bring you into a little surprise you'll have to do in person, but just know I always try to blend personal development with technology. So I do something to ground us as an experiment and then we get into the workshop. You'll walk through Vibe Studio. I will guide you through it. I'll usually have a facilitator or two to help us out. And then you walk out with something you actually built. And most of the people who come, as like we saw in the first one, is like I would say like 70 to 90% of people never even heard about what vibe coding was. And everybody walked out, with something they built in their own hands and feeling more excited and empowered about using this technology. So that's something I'm proud to share. Yeah. And the next event is April 19th at the Bass, which is very quick. But if you can't make it to that one, I have another one in May. TBD.
Amazing. Jessica, what do you hope listeners take away from this episode?
Um, the power of experimentation. It's really, it's good. It's good to experiment, just not to have fear in trying these things, that it's fun. Yeah, and that like if you didn't know it already, like the barriers are lifted and there's really not a lot of excuses. But I would say, like, with that, it's probably sometimes even harder to find focus, but just be the human in the loop for yourself. Ground yourself on like what your reason is, who you're solving for, and then it's easy. And yeah, just remove that fear because there's no reason for you to have any excuses to make what you want in this day and age.
Yes, I hope that listeners are inspired. I will link your Vibe Coding Studio to this episode so people can explore and get into that design thinking state before vibe coding maybe their own first project. How can listeners reach out to you? How can they connect and learn more about your work and your workshops?
Yeah. My website, creativecurrents.ai. My contact is there. You can sign up for if you're a business and if you're curious about having workshops or doing any services for your team. You can sign up for like a survey there and just get to know me. Or just if you just want to reach out, join the mailing list, it's all on my website. Or follow me on my Instagram. It's exact same thing at creativecurrents.ai.
Jessica, I love always getting the opportunity to collaborate and connect with you. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm excited to see what 2026 has in store for you the rest of the year.
Me too, you too. Us too. Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you. Wow. I hope today's episode opened your mind to what's possible with AI. Do you have a cool use case on how you're using AI and want to share it? DM me. I'd love to hear more and feature you on my next podcast. Until next time, here's to working smarter, not harder. See you on the next episode of How I AI. Have you just started exploring AI and feel a bit overwhelmed? Don't worry, I've got you. Jump on a quick start audit call with me so you can walk away with a clear and personalized plan to move forward with more confidence and ease. Join my community of AI adopters like yourself. Plus, grab my free resources, including the AI Get Started guide, or try my How I AI Companion GPT. It pulls insights from my guest interviews along with global reports so you can stay ahead of the curve. Follow the link in the description below to get started.